Okay, I feel like I need to revisit the subtracting integers. So yesterday we talked about how when we subtract, we actually add the opposite. I'm going to do this question again up here. Okay, so the first integer stays the same. We add, and then the opposite of subtract 6 is, or negative 6 is a plus 6, and then we get 10. So I think part of the struggle was like I showed you the shortcut first, and what I should have done is what I do in grade 9 was I explain like where we get this whole shortcut from. You know from previous experience that when we have like a set of brackets, what that really is indicating that there might be some sort of multiplication situation happening. And in grade 9, I start to introduce the concept of invisible ones, and that becomes a really, really important skill as we move into algebra. So when we have this negative here and then we have a bracket, there's really an invisible one sitting there, and we have to distribute that. Okay, so shortcuts are fantastic, but more important to me is that you actually understand where we get that shortcut from. So if we had 4, that wouldn't change, and we have a negative 1 times a negative 6, which is a plus, so a negative times a negative. And I really didn't want to explain this first because the next section is going to be multiplying integers. But I saw as I was working with Max a little bit that we were having some issues around that, so I just thought I'd introduce it now. So that's really where it comes from. Now, do my grade 9s get to do this? 2 negatives in a row, okay, make a positive? Yes, indeed they do. Okay, that is a total thing. So our brains all work a little bit differently, and I would prefer to show 2, 3 strategies any way that I can, and whichever one makes the most sense for you, then that's the one that you're going to glom onto, and that's the one that you're going to continuously use. So if add the opposite makes the most sense to you, then that's fantastic for right now, but I'm going to show you another way, okay, to do that, and that's grand too. So here again, we're going to talk about this negative 1, and if I had a negative 1 times a negative 2, because that's what a set of brackets means, I'd end up with negative 8 plus 2. And so negative 8 plus 2 is going to be negative 6. Now conversely, yesterday we talked about this, and you said I'm going to add the opposite, and we get exactly the same thing. So it's just the way our brains sort of process information, and whichever one makes the most sense to you, that's what matters. So here, okay, if we had that negative 1, and then you'd remember that you're going to multiply that first, so you end up with negative 14 plus 20, and you're going to end up with, because the digit that is positive is larger, so you keep the sign and you find the difference. Or you can do what you did yesterday, which was negative 14, add the opposite of negative 20, which is positive 20. And you can see we come back to the same thing. Okay, so as my grandmother used to say, there's more than one way to skin a cat. She was a bit of a frightening woman. So whichever way makes the most sense to you. So some of you are a little bit ahead of the curve, some of you are at the curve, some of you are behind the curve. So I just want to stop for a minute and I want to show you something. Okay, so if I had, let's say, negative 5 subtract, and then in brackets I had positive 20, okay? So if we had an invisible 1 out here, you have to remember that now I have a negative times a positive, and I'm going to end up with negative 5 minus 20. Okay, and there are 2 ways to go about this. You can think I started off at negative 5. Here's 0, here's negative 5, and I'm taking away 20 more, so I'm going to get down to negative 25. Or you can go back to how we add instead of subtract, and we say negative 5 plus, and the opposite of 20 is a negative 20. And now when the signs are the same, we keep the sign and we add the digits. I'm trying to make these videos like under 5 minutes, so I'm having a lot of trouble as I'd stand up at the board for 62 minutes and we'd have a back and forth conversation about this. So I hope I'm not doing more harm than I am good. So I want you to kind of digest this, and I've got like just a quick 24 questions. You don't have to do all of them, right? You're just taking a look at this. This is just information to help you out a little bit, get you a little bit better prepared. So if you have questions, you're going to text me back, right? Like slap something down on a piece of paper, text me back the picture and say like, how would you have done this question? Or did I do this one right? Okay, because that's what this is all about, is just some back and forth.